The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning to all of our Caltech alumni and greetings from Pasadena. My name is Lisa Unangst, and as Manager of Student Engagement and Alumni Programs here at the Caltech Alumni Association, I'm very pleased to welcome you to today's webinar on the topic of how to start a business. Before I introduce our host, I'd like to note that as part of our ongoing webinar series, we'll host a conversation on Thursday, July 21st at 12 p.m. Pacific Time with Dr. Samantha Sutton, an MIT grad and career counselor, who will be speaking about how to identify and cultivate your personal brand. Information will be posted shortly on our website and within our Facebook and LinkedIn groups. Now on to today's presentation, hosted by Ken Pickar, Visiting Professor of Mechanical and Medical Engineering here at Caltech, where he has served since 1998. Dr. Pickar is the instructor for a highly regarded class on entrepreneurship, as well as faculty advisor for the Entrepreneurs Club, Consulting Club, and Engineers for a Sustainable World. In his previous work in industry, Ken served as Senior Vice President of Engineering and Technology at Allied Signal, now Honeywell, and was GE Corporate R&D Manager of the Electronics Laboratories. He has been a member of the executive committee of the LA chapter of Tech Coast Angels since 1999 and has served on the board of Neustar, Nest Technologies, and the Albany Medical School and Medical Center. Originally from New York, Ken received his BS from Queens College at the City University of New York and his PhD in physics from the University of Pennsylvania. One logistical note for our participants. During the last 10 minutes of Dr. Pickar's presentation today, he will take questions via the chat feature of this GoToWebinar platform. So please feel free to enter your thoughts or feedback during the hour. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Pickar.
It's a great pleasure to be here and talk with you, this very diverse audience who I know have varying knowledge of the subject of starting a business, from those who are been there, done that, to those who are contemplating it. So I will try to hit some kind of happy medium. As Lisa said, I teach entrepreneurship, management of technology, and most recently design for the disabled, design class. I am at the intersection in my life and in my career of business and academia. I try to provide to my students a realistic experience. I'm interested in analysis, which is how do innovation processes work. I'm interested in synthesis, actually building stuff, such as writing a business plan and designing a cool product. And then I like to work always with end customers, be they in the business or in the product, in order to create products that are truly useful. I spend a significant amount of time advising, mentoring, and guiding students. I learn from them in the years I've been here. That has certainly been cumulative to me. And I try in all my endeavors to stay real. That is, I do some abstract, but the point is to connect to the outside world for my Caltech students. I have to give you full disclosure first. You're going to listen to me, and some of you will benefit more than others. I tell students that I am the Caltech's renowned expert. I don't say what I'm an expert in. I'm still trying to figure that one out. You can step into my office for advice, but the advice you're about to get is of varying quality. On the worst is, thanks a lot for that, you've ruined my life. In the middle, that was completely useless. And then, thank you, I'll name my firstborn after you. So somewhere in that range, you will find the value of today's lecture. So I'm going to spend some time on talking about why starting a company is so hard. That should not come as any revelation to many of you, but it's interesting going through some of the reasons why it's so hard and putting some barriers out there before you do start companies so that you go into it with your, let's say, with your eyes open. So we'll give a framework. I'll talk about some of the unknowns. I'll try to talk about some of the unknown unknowns. How can we do it better? We're always interested in that. You know, the stupidest thing you can do in life is bet on a football play on television, lose, and then bet on the instant replay. At least not make the same mistakes again. So let me begin with talking in a very grandiose way about the grand challenges of the 21st century. How's that as a way to start? And this is what I consider a grand challenge, as yet undiscovered, but a methodology for moving technology efficiently from a university or industrial laboratory to commercial exploitation. Anyone you know who's involved in this will validate that this is a huge challenge. And the methodology, this is maybe less commonly agreed to, is much more complex than the technology itself, which is somewhat diminishing to those who work in technology. So you can, start with something that's highly scientific in the laboratory with some really interesting applications that you saw. You then have a smooth, elegant, beautiful transition where you take that into the marketplace, and then you have this incredible business success, and that is the dream. The reality, unfortunately, many more times than that, is to start with that great science, but then fall into the valley of death. You suddenly find that what you thought was so cool is somewhat less so. One of the problems is that, and this is fundamental to the way engineers and scientists think, is that their perception is that the percentage of business success is really chiefly due to technology innovation. If you've got a great technology that is competitive with anything that you can see in the outside world, then that's 80% of the way to creating a great business. The reality, and I know this over many years of experience and study, is the reality is that it's at best 20%. It's all of these other things that get in the way of becoming a successful business, and I'm going to spend some time discussing that. While the people who are making investments, plus the principals, are making these bets not knowing if the technology, even the one that is really cool in the laboratory, cool in prototype, will in fact prove itself. Oh, and what's even worse is the technology itself can turn out to be really sound and commercializable, but the company somehow fails. Now, why does it fail? Well, let's just take a look at a few, to begin the discussion, product flops. And I always like to look at the extreme. So what distinguishes a simply bad product from the truly, truly awful and disgusting? And I actually go through my house and I photograph user interfaces on product just to make my point. And I can go off on a rant on this, but I will restrain myself. But one thing is pretty clear is a dreadful user interface. Design is not how it works. It's about making the users feel stupid. So our terrible interface looks good. How many times have you got to an interface that made you feel stupid and unnecessarily so? You know a whole bunch of people that really like your product idea, but it turns out that you've exaggerated how much they like it or whether they're truly interested. And so it turns out that the need is really shared by very few people. In other words, there's no market of hungry, thirsty people who desire and crave your product. There's market pressures, which is sometimes your own ego and also the idea of what's out there already to force early commercialization. So this is a comic example of a technology that never worked, and it's possible to introduce things too soon, and it's possible also to introduce things too late. So getting the right pressure to do things, and I would argue it's usually too soon rather than too late, and we'll discuss that as we go on. The other possibility is you have an entrenched fortress, a great market, a great company, but you've got an idea that's a little bit better, so you attack that entrenched force. You don't know how thick those walls are. You don't know how many cannon are up there, and you find that out the hard way as you try to go against really good entrenched competition. So that's another failure mode. Jim Louderback said some ideas are eventually successful, but he notes, and so have I, but often after the founding company has been itself ruined because it didn't have the staying power to be there when the technology truly and the product truly was ready to be adopted. And so a lot of the problem in starting a company, all we have to do is look into the mirror, because we are our own worst enemy. So here is where engineers are their own worst enemy. Creative engineers with good technical ideas lead to many startups with no marketing sense. And this, I must say, from my experience here with Caltech students and other students as well, is quite common. It sounds so cool, and you love the technology, so you spend a lot of time working the technology, less so really finding out who really cares. And part of it is when you have a bubble economy, then you don't have to worry about it. You just create something, and this greatly growing market will grab it up. The very fact that it's a bubble should say something to you about the solidness of that thinking. The market may truly be in decline or past its peak. That's not a good idea to go into a declining market because it's nice to have a product that gets a niche and then grows along with the market. The market's in decline, of course, you might just get squeezed out. Entrenched competition, which I mentioned with that fortress, you got to worry about that. And there's some great Caltech people who have. Cy Ramo in his book talks about attacking entrenched competition. And this is the other one. Now this may just be me, but it's accepted as truth that come up with a great product and the profitability will basically take care of itself. I hate that type of thinking because it often doesn't take care of itself, and it diverts you from thinking about what the business model should be, which is how you're going to make money, and that is a terrible thing to be diverted from at any stage of the business. And the truth is that whatever technology you have is only good for a certain period of time. And if you do it too soon, it's not good. And if you do it too late, it's not good. Here's something else. The probability of your success is you can decompose it into the probability of all the pieces that have to also be successful. And you have to argue here that if one of those doesn't work, then you're multiplying by 0, and the probability will reflect that. So I'm just going with a very crude way, but so P1 is the probability of a technology working. P2 is that it's better than the competition. P3 is you're getting the market size right, the growth rate, the timing, who the initial customer is going to be. How about making the thing? Manufacturing, leadership, hiring the right people, business. It goes on and on. I just gave a few P's. You could really have 15 P's without too much trouble. And so if I just took 10 and I said each one was 0.9, which isn't bad, we're down to 0.35 for success. Now this is clearly an oversimplified model. It's just an attempt, a grasping attempt to figure out why it's so hard to do. And also those P's have interactions, so P1 and P1 can affect P2 and P2 can affect P5, which makes it even more complicated. So sometimes you could think about this. I'm never going to get all these things right. All these gang P's, in fact, can give success. And I'll give you my absolute favorite example. This is a great Caltech JPL accomplishment. You went through all the things that had to work for that landing to happen. You would absolutely, a priori, guarantee that it wouldn't work. And yet it worked. So, and I could go into this in some detail because I have Rob Manning, who ran that landing, a lecturer in my class, but suffice to say that they work the problem in a way that even if one of the P's is slightly less than 1, there's workarounds. The failures can be gentle, and the result is that you get something that works most of the time, which is, to me, truly amazing. Okay, it's hard. Now, the question you have to be asking is, what should you be thinking about to actually make a decision? Should I start a company? So let me start with the existential question, which is, why am I doing this? Why do I want to start a company? And if you can satisfy yourself that you've got a good, a noble, or an ignoble reason that you can resonate with, do you have a support from the people who mean something to you? That is your family. You have mentors. I hope you have mentors, people whose opinions you really trust and go to for advice. Do you have support from them? And obviously starting with your family. Do you need outside financing? Obviously, if you had something that didn't require money or much money from the outside, it simplifies, because I'm going to be spending a lot of time and the rest of this talk on money. Are you in business with a potential liquidity event, which means you get a chunk of money for it, or are you in a lifestyle business, something where you can earn enough money to keep the business supported, but really it's not something you can sell anytime soon? And here's another one. Are you a control freak? Is this something that you don't do that well when you talk to other people? Maybe that's one of the reasons you're thinking about going and starting something of your own. Surely you could do better than your bosses in the businesses that you've worked in. And so this control thing could be a terribly important thing for you. And what is your maximum burn rate? And I mean burn rate in the fuller sense, not only how much money that you use in getting through what your business is, but how much energy can you put into this? Is 24 hours enough time in the day that you can do all the things you have to do and still have a life? Okay, let's cut to the chase and talk about financing. Let's assume you're going to need some money for this. Financing can be divided in the early stage into friends, families, and fools, angels, VCs, the federal government, and there's loads and loads more. And I'll go through a list of some of the places you can get money. The question is, which works best and when? And what should the entrepreneur worry about when he's going after or she's going after trying to get this money? One thing is a good partner. Talking to some my Caltech colleagues here who have started companies that sound really good and then didn't end well, it's often because of not believing or the different driving mechanism of the VC and the professor. This is not an uncommon thing. The person has to be a good partner, and you have to really learn how to be able to work together. Having a lead customer, someone who is suffering in pain, and you have something that would alleviate that pain, and they're willing to pay for it, that is the coolest. That will help you validate your business model. It'll address your burn rate versus the cash in hand. It'll address the time to profitability because you'll have your first customer already in hand. And if that person has worked with startups before, that can be cool as well. And it also tells you that you have a product that someone wants, and it forces you to do some marketing very early on, which I think is very healthy. Okay, so here's what people worry about also, which I think they should be worrying a lot less about. So one is, I can tell you what my business is. I have students coming in and say, and they don't tell me anything. They tell me how great it is, but they don't tell me what it is, because the fear of the idea, if all I have to do is tell you this idea, and then next thing I know it's going to be, and my idea will have been stolen. I have never in my experience seen that happen. And by not being willing to talk and share, you end up with the interview is not being as useful as you would have thought. This is, it won't get stolen, and if you must talk about it. Give me 10-year runouts, spreadsheets that go out 10 years. When I was in high school, I worked for the New York City Public Library. I was a junior clerk. My job was shelving books. So I am really, really good at knowing the difference between fiction by the author's last name and nonfiction by the Dewey Decimal System. I can tell you with no fear of contradiction that if I were filing a business plan, they would all go in the fiction section. So don't give me a 10-year runout. Giving up excessive share of the business, I'm going to keep 100% for myself. It's much better to give options and stock to people who are going to work, because they will then be as motivated as you are to work. And if you're giving up a small amount of your business to do that, so be it. I hate making fast decisions. I have to think about what I do. I mean, I want to make sure that I'm right. Well, it turns out that fast and approximate is better than slow and right, because if it's approximate and you have to adjust it again with another fast decision, the world moves along. If you're going to wait 6 months till you do a study, then you will be lost before you even begin. So don't worry about your decision being too fast and based upon inadequate information. That goes with the territory. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it just shows the diversity of how VCs evaluate businesses. So this is after you've been established for a while. You need a few $1 million. You've already gotten going. So you can see large market opportunity for Kleiner Perkins, long-lasting competitive edge. They hate scientific breakthroughs. I wonder why that is. And then Menlo Parker's, it's all about partners. It's about the market, business model. Trinity, it's the CEO, the business leader. That's what they invest in. And then markets. So it's basically, you have some of the same words here, but you can see you're not going to come with a one-size-fits-all at the VC level. They all have their own quirks and things that they think interesting and less so. Tech Coast Angels, which I have a lot of experience in both making investments and seeing many businesses propose. We're looking for $50 to $100 million after, 5 years or so. Compelling strategy for capturing the market. Proprietary technology, some strong barrier to entry. Don't bring me an app, for example, which can easily be copied. Strong management with relevant and successful experience, and this is the one that hurts us the most, a real exit strategy for the investors, because there are businesses where the principals are doing very fine because they have a lifestyle type business, and we don't get anything. I must say that I find that very annoying. A desire for advice and coaching. We have the mistaken feeling that we can help because we've seen all this stuff before. And evaluation that fits within investment risk reward expectation. You're going to tell us how much your company is worth when we invest, and that turns out to be a very controversial discussion. Okay, there's also the analogy to Kickstarter. This has happened in the past couple of years, that there is crowdfunding of startups over the internet. And this is also an interesting new approach for getting money. So one additional area I like looking at is, and I have to say this is the most important criteria for me in making an investment, is the track record, the credibility, the passion of the principals. How much do they really impress me as people who are going to be spending all that time that's required to make this a successful company, and some proof that they've done it before, or at least know some of the problems in having done it before. We're all scientifically trained. We can do back-of-the-envelope calculations to see if something is physically possible. I remember something where we could prove that it violated laws of physics, but the entrepreneur said, yeah, it does, but wouldn't it be great if? That was not a convincing argument. What stage of development? Is it the very earliest prototype, or they actually have working models or manufacturing models which people are using? That makes a huge difference in knowing just what the business is worth. Intellectual property, because sometimes the business can crater, but if there's some good intellectual property, you can salvage something from it, and it also defends you against others who might attempt to copy your device. You'll find out there are government regulations that you weren't aware of that can really hurt you in getting your business out. Are there standards that are required for your business? To look at these things as well. Distribution, how can you bring the innovation to the customer? With the internet ordering and Amazon, that problem has gotten a lot simpler, but you may have something that you can't ship by Amazon, in which case you've got to go figure out how you're going to get the product into your customer's premises. Can you get a partnership to have someone else do some of the tough work so you don't have to do it all yourself? Can you make it? How much will it cost? I hope people here know what the learning curve is. It's one of the great inventions that of manufacturing, which says if you double the volume, you will lower the price for the nth plus one part by some fixed percentage, and if you keep on doubling it, it goes down by the same percentage. I see no real physical understanding or explanation of why this works, but it's a good back of the envelope calculation. So if you're competing against someone with a large growing manufacturing base, you're going to be really at a trouble competing with them in cost if you're starting at the top of the learning curve. How do you maintain the product? That's kind of interesting for your customer. And do you have the staying power? Do you have enough money to develop the market? What if the schedule slips? I can guarantee, almost without exception, the schedule will slip and you're going to need more money. Partnerships, relationships to achieve the above. Those are the things you should be worrying about. Okay, so here's a powerful oversimplification. Summary of necessary but not sufficient conditions. The market. You've identified a customer. I know this makes me sound like some kind of sadist. A customer in extreme pain. A customer whose business is being seriously affected. An influential customer with who is a market and technology leader, so others will follow that customer and you'll grow your market. You can dominate this targeted market, and it's a fast-growing market. We talked about IP. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but cash flow is in many ways the most important thing that a CEO thinks about. If you look at business activity, in the middle, you get payments from your customers on a monthly basis, you borrow money, you sell shares, all that brings money in, but then the money comes out in salaries, materials, equipment. If you've got a loan, you have to pay interest on the debt. If the shareholders demand dividends, which they probably will not in an early company, that's the cash flow of the business. And you subtract these two on the business activity, and that says what your burn rate. And so this cash flow is typically a negative quantity because you're not bringing a lot of money in. You're not selling anything in the beginning and bringing in outside money as it's not an event that happens all the time. So the monthly negative cash flow is what's also called the burn rate. And the central riveting thought for a CEO, the thing that keeps him awake at night, doesn't get a good night's sleep because the cash in the bank divided by the burn rate is the number of months until you are out of business. And that is as bad as it can get. Very quickly, a cash profile. You start here in the lower left. You get an initial investment, perhaps from your friends, family, and fools. You burn cash. And then all that time you're trying to raise money for the second investment. It's gone down. You're near zero, but you're not at zero. And, oh, God, the money came in. That's great. Now you burn it. Oh, my God, we're almost running out. And then the product takes off, and that's a hockey stick. And this is a good cash profile. So some financial principles. First, if you are not a cheapskate now, it's very important for you to become one. So cheap and cheaper is what you are thinking about. You need, whatever your burn rate is, it's too high, you've got to lower it. You get the cheapest office space. Some of my friends, some of my former students are in the absolute worst parts of LA. You don't want to walk there at night, but that's where their offices are. You might use no office space. That's why Starbucks was invented. It has nothing to do with coffee. That's something you buy in order to get the office space. You use the smallest team you can use, everyone overworked. You do outsourcing and contracting so you don't have to bring in people. If you want to buy something, you first go on eBay and Craigslist to buy various things that you need, starting with the desk. You look at the buy-make decision. Sometimes it's cheaper to make things. Sometimes it's cheaper to go buy things. You don't want elaborate, expensive prototypes that take a long time. You want small, cheap, crude prototypes and then rapidly evolve them. You want low inventory of product. You want a lower salary. You want zero salary. The less you can do, the better it is. Keep your day job. Lease rather than buy. Sell stuff. You may have some junk lying around that you don't need. Sell it. Hire part-time or on contract, or we talked about giving people options. You can barter for space and services. There may be a business that has more space than they need. You can get a little corner of it. as we said, pay in stock, and there's lots of other ways of being a cheapskate that if we all combine our minds, we can come up with some really good ones. Okay, but you need money. Let's just say I did all that, I've got my company going, but I need more money. So you can raise your money from debt or equity. And when you make that decision whether you go for debt or equity, one of the things you worry about is control, which, as I said, is not the worst thing you should be worrying about. The people, this gets built into the people who become entrepreneurs. You need dollars, but you want to keep control. You'd rather finance it yourself and you have 100%. So the issues are your degree of desperation, your need for advice, contracts, and mentoring, valuation, which I'll spend a few moments on. That is one of the great mysteries, and what reserve you can build for the future. The more you get, the better it is. The CEO looks for financing all the time, beginning the day after he gets financing from the previous round. This is his or her chief occupation. You can get money by an advance on sales. The customer loves it so much, they'll give you some money to help develop it. You can get debt, go to the bank. You can get equity, get someone to invest in your company. The good news about debt is that you have more control. The bank just wants to get their interest payment at the end of the month, but it's your business. So there's no sharing of success. If you are successful, the bank doesn't want 50% of your business, and it's typically a fixed interest rate, so it's predictable. Predictability is good. And it's a big motivator. You've got to sell enough in the month in order to be able to pay off the bank. That keeps you going. There's a tax advantage. You don't pay, you can deduct that from your income. The minuses of debt is it affects cash flow because every month I have to pay someone off. And that means that's money I don't have to invest in the company. It reduces your profits, and you have to pay good times or bad. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, the banker, they're generally not warm and cuddly people. They want their money, and that's what they're in there for on a monthly basis. Equity, it's easier to begin with. That is, if you can get someone to loan you some money, some member of your family, for example. You can have a helpful partner, can be helpful. It could be a motivator, too, to convince other people that your business is really great. So it validates the model. The negative of equity is you share the upside. So if you do really great, someone else has to get a piece of it. And let's face it, if the upside is sufficiently big, I mean, part of a fortune is good enough. The loss of control, that is not a trivial issue if it gets to the point where you have disagreements on, because if the loss of control is such, they can, in fact, fire you, this company that you spend so much time and energy building. Sweat equity is what you start with before you get funding. You're building a product that's going to, or you're building something that's going to have some valuation, and you're doing it with no money. It's really your own sweat, your own unpaid labor. SBIRs, it takes a year or so to get it, but these have been very popular, and it's essentially it's free money. They're not asking for anything back, and they're not asking you to share your success with them. Getting research contracts from a university, this is commonly done. We use the research contract to help and develop some of the base technology that you need. It can come from the feds, the state. You can have a corporate partner, you can have a customer, you can even have a supplier help you. You can barter. This isn't just something that's used in third world economies. In fact, we use it commonly here. There are some things that you could do for someone else and they could do for you. For rent, professional services, and just let your imagination run free. Part-time consulting, that can go both ways. You could get someone to consult for you, and then you consult for them because it's something that you know. Short-term loans, securing a succession of small-term loans can help you. Personal credit. You can go to a credit union and you make a business loan, and you get this credit union or a bank, and all you need is someone to sign it for you, or you can actually do credit cards. Now this sounds the most bizarre of all. Think about the interest rate on a credit card. However, some of you may know there's a company that some of you may have heard of which did it that way, and that is Google. That's how they started, with credit cards. It still blows me away every time I think about it. Purchase orders can be used as collateral. SBA loans, not just SBI grants. An investor to guarantee your loan. Debt, asset-based loans. Use your assets like accounts receivable and inventory. You can lease equipment. Inventory-based lines of credit. Royalty financing. There's credit unions, community development organizations. You establish your location in a community that wants to attract business. They will help fund you. Subordinated debt, warrants. It could be a self-funded corporation, which we've talked about. We're talking about outside capital sources. Let's just go through this very quickly. Let's see, it's about half an hour now, so we have 15 minutes. Okay, I think we can manage this. So let's start with the seed, the friends, family, and fools, the angels, and then the VCs, and then mezzanine financing, because you're going to be a billion-dollar business. And then comes the liquidity event, where you get your money from an IPO or from an acquisition. Okay, let's just do a quick, simple back-of-the-envelope calculation on what it means when you take other people's money. So let's assume before funding you own 100%. Oh, I said own. That should have been corrected. You own 100% of the company. How do you calculate who owns what after the money is raised? So if the pre-money valuation is $2 million, and we'll discuss how that comes about, your ownership before is 100%. This is my company. This is my idea. I got the thing started. I didn't give out any stock. That's it. How does he get that $2 million? Well, you are what the market says you are. That's really the simple way of saying it. If an investor is telling you that your startup is worth $1 or $2 million, well, that's what it's worth. You may say it's worth more. I know it's worth more. I've got liquid assets. I have receivables. I have sweat equity. And if someone's going to only pay you $2 million, and no matter what you do, that's all you can get, that's what your company is worth. If you're unable to raise money for your startup, then you have to accept the market valuation. However, if you raise a friend's, family, and fool's money, it may be they believe you're a bull, and you might be overvalued. You might have claimed more for yourself, and try to tell the market what you're worth. And the best way of do that is use financial projections? No. Use comparables. Find out how much similar companies in your industry are worth at your stage of growth. It won't be exactly the same, but that to me seems like the best and the most compelling argument. And let's face it, there are bubbles in valuations. We had one not that long ago where companies with just a bare idea or somehow $5 million valuation because they were in the right industry. To me, that's completely nuts, but people were able to get away with it. But that may not happen today in your industry. So the other argument on your side you can do is you wave your hands to get a higher valuation is that I've got all this cool IP protection. I've got to validate it. No, it's not validated. But I do have a market. I have a great management team, and it has this experience. A potential huge payout. There you have to really wave your arms. And then if you trade off ownership with capitalization, so we just said before funding you own 100% of the company. How do you calculate who owns what after the money is raised? So the ownership before you see in that third column is 100% because its pre-money is $2 million. But then the angels give $1 million. You see that in the second column. So the post-money is just add the two up, the two, the pre, the one which the angels gave, and now your post is 3. So $3 million is 100%. Well, you have 2, the angels have 1, so you have 2/3 of the company. That's not bad. So congratulations. I give a question mark there. You have lost 1/3 of your company. You have added strangers to your board. Or at least you have majority ownership. Your company is worth $3 million, of which your share is worth $2 million. This is the best way of saying that this is what this company is worth, and it's worth that just when the deal is made. So the question is, how much do you need? You went for $1 million. Usually you need more than you think. Time equals money. There's always this problem of excessive optimism. The product development time takes longer. I never heard one that took less. The market development time can take longer. You have to hire people and then, oh no, this person's a turkey, fire them. You have Murphy's Law. We all know what that is. It governs human life. And let's face it, you don't know what you don't know. So you need as much money as you can get. You leverage all sources and you never stop. And allow 6 months to raise the money. Time passes. I need more money to grow or to survive. So now we're at round B. I say it's now 10 million because a year has elapsed since the previous one. Remember, the last post was 3, but now the company's worth more. I've got some sales. I feel more confident. The VCs, I want 5 million, and I choose this amount because I want it to last me for a little bit. The total is 15 million. That's the valuation after the B round. Congratulations. Notice how I put a question mark after that? Your company is now worth $15 million. You started with a pre of 10. The VC accepted that pre. They added 5, so it's 15. Uh-oh, new strangers to your board. How much do you own? Well, if you go through the numbers, you really own 6.7 million, and the total is 15. So you only control now 44% of the business. Last I read, that was less than 50%. You've lost control, but your investment is now valued at 6.7 because of the up round. What is the alternative? I hope I hear a chorus coming from there. It's called a down round, where your company was not worth more, it was worth less. Remember, we had this 3 at the beginning. Maybe the pre will be 2 or 1, and so everyone gets, the word is crunched. The bad news, even with this up round, the investments are liquid. There's no market to convert to cash. And so there is now markets being established for pre-public companies, but in the simplest way you can say there's no cash you're going to get for that. But you have funding to take you to the next level. And so it goes until you die. You're the walking wounded, and I have a number of investments like that where you basically lose contact. They're kind of functioning, but there's no liquidity event. You're a lifestyle company, which means you're doing even better, but there's still no money coming to the investors, but you're doing okay. Acquisition, that's good. It usually means a nice chunk of change. You get acquired by another company, and several of the companies in my class have had that exit. And then, of course, IPO, which is the most glamorous. I've been fortunate enough to be involved with a couple of them. Once I was on the board, and once I was an early investor. And you go to the New York Stock Exchange, and it is so much fun. I recommend this to everybody. The financing decision determines what kind of company you will build. What works, angel or VC? What works and what doesn't work. So I'm going to run through quickly what doesn't work when you go to an angel or VC. How do you get rejected? Idea affords no competitive advantage and no barrier to entry from competition. Something that's nice to have, but rather than something which addresses a real market pain, an idea which requires a large infrastructure. I love this one. I'm in the semiconductor business. Step 1, build $1 billion factory. That's going to have a hard time getting investment. Something which is a feature on a present device, a present product. Great idea, but not enough space. Something which attacks an entrenched competitor. Hard to prove the business model quickly. Investment cannot be returned in order of 5 to 7 years, and no path to profitability. Unmanufacturable using current technology, only 20% better than a current product. You want to be much better than current product, or it just doesn't make any sense, because that current product is going to be better and it'll be as good as your product by the time you get your product introduced. You say your unproven idea is worth $5 million. That weighs the door. You will be successful. This one is one of my favorites. In China, all I need is 1% of the market. So you choose some very large number. Say I need this insignificant share, and that'll be a huge business. I think this is a bogus argument, et cetera, et cetera. Unmanufacturable, 20, you say, okay. that becoming an entrepreneur is not that, so what's worked? That becoming an entrepreneur is not that different than being a Caltech student, which you've all been. You will be with some really smart people. You'll have a chance to exercise your analytic bent, and you will have no life. In science, Murphy rules. In business, he also rules, but he hates you. Okay, let me just conclude by saying I've shared some of the difficulties in starting a business, and I've given you maybe even more to worry about than you were aware of and told you you should worry. But what I haven't done, and I want to end on this note, I haven't spent much time in describing the other reality. This business that exists or will exist did not exist before. They say that art is creative. To me, designing a product and seeing that product in the world, that's creative too. That's an act of creation. And how creative is creating a business with people employed and a product that people love? I don't think it gets any better than that. And you're doing a general benefit to the world too, because of the great product you produce and the business that you've created that sustains lots of people. And you've taken on a fantastic challenge and you've succeeded. I don't know what in life is harder than doing that, and you should be really well pleased with what you've done. Thank you. And I think we can take some questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Pickar. Sorry about that. We had a little feedback. Thanks so much to Dr. Pickar for those wonderful thoughts and reflections on entrepreneurship. We have a number of different questions, so we're going to try and get to a few in the last few minutes that we have here. We have one question. Someone is asking about the challenge of commercializing, and how do you really find the right pair, the right team to be successful in that process? Do you have any advice as to how to find the right people?
Well, that's one of the things that the angels can help you with, and the VCs as well. The VCs would like to see a more complete team because they're at a later stage, but angels are satisfied with one or two impassioned people, and they can then make, they will know, for example, let's say you need a CFO, and you just don't hang around with people who are on that side of the ledger, and so they can help you do this. Major league networking. There's loads of things that occur here in LA and elsewhere which involve lots of little companies talking about their issues. I'd walk into an incubator and talk to people in incubators to see if you can get some advice there. The alumni notes, LinkedIn also, of course, is the best way of finding people that you have some connection with. So I would certainly think about LinkedIn as a possibility as well. You have a mentor, you have a family, you may have something that you read about where the person has, let's say, a successful company and people are looking for new things and you think your thing can be helpful. You then either use LinkedIn or find someone who knows that person and see if you can make the contact there. So there's many ways of doing it, but it basically means extreme networking to find the right team.
Great, thank you. So I'll just ask two questions that were relatively short. One was, could you discuss the barriers of entry for folks who are developing phone apps? And one was, is it okay to approach angel investors who are outside of your local area?
One of the things about take a second first. Angel investing has become not only pretty ubiquitous everywhere in the country, even places that you wouldn't expect it, that you, without going too far, you can find an angel investment group. And the angel investments groups do talk to each other. There's even a society where the leads of the angel investment groups meet. So the answer to that, question is yes, and I would certainly take advantage of whoever your local angel investors are. Typically, if you're outside the area, I know we cover all of Southern California with the Tech Coast Angels, everywhere from San Diego, Santa Barbara, and there's also our Pasadena Angel compatriots right here. So we cover pretty much Southern California pretty well. So if there's anywhere in Southern California, Tech Coast Angels can be helpful. So yeah, you can find an angel and it won't be too far from you. Phone apps, I'm less familiar with. I like an app as part of a larger product rather than just something cool that you can put up and charge $1 for. Now, forgive me, because I'm not talking out of great knowledge of these, and I do use apps, but I think the fundamental problem is the problem of the trivial many. There's just so much stuff out there that how do you have your app gain traction, something that people will use? If you look at the numbers, the statistics have to be pretty terrible for successful apps. If, on the other hand, and we do this in my class, we use the app as part of the product, and that's the user interface is through an app on the iPhone, then that's beyond cool. And we're doing things right now on things that help elderly people in fall prevention. There's an app that's you can put on the phone that measures acceleration, for example, so you know if someone's fallen. And there's loads of applications like that. But you're not making money from the app, you're making money from the product as a whole.
Okay, so 2 more questions, and we had several people ask some variation of these. First, how do you know when to give up on an idea? And how does a scientist or engineer strengthen their credibility when they're approaching MBAs?
Two great questions. Let me start with the MBAs. I run classes with both Marshall and UCLA. And in both cases, when I talk to MBAs, they're looking for cool Caltech ideas. You have a Caltech branding, so they think that your idea must be okay. So I can, if you know anyone who's been to those business schools, you can network very rapidly. There are people I know on this talk who have business, who are at business schools. So I would network and then convince them that you've got a really, really cool idea and you need their help. I mean, those two have to be golden to attract an MBA because many of them are looking to start new businesses. And I think it's a great idea to form a partnership with a person with a business school experience. What was the first part of that question?
How do you know when to give up on an idea?
Oh, that's a tough one. Generally speaking, if you're in the mode of starting a company, then you will have more than one idea that you're working on, and you can sort of rack and stack them based upon how good you feel about it on a particular day. If you're working on something which is you know something about because you're doing some research in, that's a tough question because you can almost argue that the fact that you're putting up with disappointment is a good watchword for how successful you're going to be because you're not going to find people who are going to go running at you because your idea is so cool. They may be polite listening to you, but then nothing happens from it. I say you have to look into yourself and when you're just tired of it. It's just not seem to be working. People don't believe it. I'm making my best, most impassioned arguments, and I'm looking in people's eyes and they don't seem that excited. And if you do that enough times, then it's not a bad idea to dial on.
Okay, we have a question about the danger of patent trolls or intellectual property claims of other firms. Could you discuss that a bit?
I've had just a little bit of experience with it. I find it pretty difficult because you're trying to start a company and you're spending a lot of your time dealing with that. I haven't talked about dealing with patent lawyers, etc., because at the very, very beginning they can be somewhat expensive. I would say once you're serious and the idea is going, it really, really makes sense to get some really good professional help. They will know something about the patent trolls. They will probably have been affected by them. They will know what what steps to take when your patent is written. I think the issue is, are you infringing upon someone else? And I think the best thing, I know this is like a cop-out, is to have really great legal advice, because otherwise the trolls are going to be a lot smarter than you are.
We have one person who says, notes that your examples are B2B oriented and asks if that is your preferred model.
It's interesting. I should have been thinking about this, but in fact, not all my TCA, Tech Coast Angel investments have been B2B. But I must admit, I do like B2B because the sales can be larger, and you're dealing with someone who, if you develop that relationship, it can grow, and it could be the beginning of doing something else with another business as well. I know if you come up with a really cool consumer product that someone could buy, that it could also grow very fast. But it is true, and I thank you for pointing it out, that my experience is more on the B2B side.
We have one person who's asking about what a first step would be in working with a partner. Should a first step be going to a lawyer or drafting an agreement, or what might it be?
I'm assuming here you have a partner that you've gone through the screening, and maybe it's someone, it's an old friend, someone that you know, and that, and I think there's lots of stuff that's online, but it would not be a bad idea to get an hour or two of a lawyer's time, and just to show what you've got. In other words, work in collaboration with a lawyer to reduce the charges with someone who has been there and done that before. And there are a lot of lawyers who are willing to take this as, let's say, a start on, because they know if you do want to reestablish a company, you then will require more by way of a lawyer. So I would certainly get some legal advice, but I would also go online to see what I can find out about things that I should work in, just to be, so you approach it from some sense of knowledge rather than going into it completely innocently.
Okay, and I think we have time for just one more question. We have someone asking, if you're a student who starts a company with an advisor, how do you determine who owns how much?
Well, let's assume at Caltech, what happens is, and I hate to say this if you're students out there, but the actual intellectual property is owned not by the student or by the faculty member, but it's owned by the university. That's the Bayh-Dole rule. Now, what Caltech, I'm just taking Caltech, what Caltech will do is they will give you a license to use the technology to build your business, and it is typically through the professor. So, and I know this can seem unfair because you felt that this was really your idea, but if it's done under the professor's aegis and you were a graduate student and it was work that was funded by the government, then the professor and you have to cut a deal, but the professor really is the one who will be the licensee for the company. On the other hand, if it's an idea that you came up with jointly and had nothing at all to do with anything that you did at Caltech, you didn't use Caltech equipment, and you just, went over a beer and this is what you came up with, then I think you can make your own proposal and see how that works. You have a little bit more power there because it doesn't automatically belong to the professor.
Great. Well, thank you again so much, Dr. Pickar, for your time today. Dr. Pickar has been very kind in saying that he's willing to have these slides sent out to participants on the webinar today. So we'll take care of that in the next day or so. We'll also be sending out a short post-event survey, and we'd love your feedback. Thanks so much to everyone for joining us today, and we'll hope to see you for our next webinar on July 21st. Bye-bye.